Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we're back here today with another edition of Budget Magic. So this one, I think, is a pretty sweet one. We are playing Modern one more time. Don't worry, Shadows over Innistrad releases later this week on Magic Online, so I expect that for the next few weeks we'll probably be playing standard decks with some sweet new Shadows cards, so I'm super excited for that. But one more Modern Budget Magic to tide us over until the release of Shadows on Magic Online. And this one is pretty interesting. So we're playing Dark Dweller Stone Rain. As you can see, 99 bucks in paper, 69 ticks online. And this is a different take on a land destruction deck. So a while ago, we tried to play a land destruction deck on Against Odds, and that one was pretty janky. We were trying to win with Dingus Egg as our finisher, and it just didn't work very well. This one, I think, is a lot more competitive version of a land destruction deck because it gets to play good cards, and it's not playing Dingus Egg. So let's break down the deck. This one, probably the easiest way to explain it is to go in order of the mana curve. So what our deck wants to be doing is on turn 1, we want to be playing one of these cards. Either Arbor Elf, Birds of Paradise, or Utopia Sprawl. So all of these cards, in one way or another, ramp us. So we'll have 3 mana on turn 2. So for Arbor Elves, 1 mana 1/1 that can untap a forest. 2 Birds of Paradise can tap it to make a mana of any color. And Utopia Sprawl enchants a forest. When it comes into play, you choose a color. And whenever that forest is tapped for mana, we get to add a mana of the chosen color to our mana pool. So any of these cards get us to 3 mana on turn 2, which is kind of the goal. Also, Arbor Elf works really well with Utopia Sprawl, because Utopia Sprawl enchants a forest and makes it produce 2 mana essentially, and Arbor Elf can untap a forest. So with those 2 cards combined, 1 forest and 1 Arbor Elf with the Utopia Sprawl in the forest can make 4 mana a turn, so it can get out of hand pretty quickly. So step 1, play one of these on turn 1. We have enough of them that we should always have one. And then step 2, on turn 2, we start the land destruction process. So we have 4 Stone Rains, we have 4 Molten Rains, and 3 Beast Within. So Stone Rain, pretty simple, 2 and a red sorcery, destroy a land. Molten Rain, almost the same thing, a little trickier for our deck because it costs double red, and sometimes that can be a problem because we're a budget deck, we don't have Stomping Grounds and fetch lands, so that can be a little problematic, but still, destroys a land, and if the land's a non-basic, Molten Rain does 2 damage to the land's controller. And then Beast Within is a really interesting one. It is instant speed, it destroys a permanent, so you can hit a land or anything else, but the controller of the permanent gets a 3/3 green beast token. So usually we want to lead on the Stone Rains and Molten Rains. Usually Molten Rain because it's the hardest one to cast because of the double red. And then Beast Within we kind of save a little bit because it's not as good on turn 2 because it gives our opponent a 3/3 which can start beating us down. But in the late game it's even better because we can destroy a Planeswalker or we can hit one of our own lands to make a 3/3 to start attacking. So turn 1, Mana Dork. Turn 2, Stone Rains. Then on turn 3, we have some sweet 4-drops here. We have an Avalanche Riders, Acid Moss, and a Thrun the Last Troll. So the Acid Moss and the Avalanche Riders, more land destruction, so we can play a Mana Dork on turn 1, destroy a land on turn 2, destroy a land on turn 3. Avalanche Riders also can get in some damage, but then it usually dies the next turn. It has haste. It's a 2/2, but it also has Echo, so we have to pay its mana cost again the next turn if we want to keep it around. So most of the time we kill a land, attack for 2, or chump block, and then it goes away. The Acid Moss, on the other hand, is sweet because it actually ramps us. It destroys a land, plus we get to search for a forest and put it on the battlefield. So it's half land destruction, half, I don't know, rampant growth, essentially, but only for forests. I guess that's nature's lore. So it can get us to 6 mana on turn 4, and then Thrun, I've had this one in and out of the deck. Sometimes I play something else in that slot, but it's good against counterspell decks. It can regenerate, it blocks well. 5-drops, this is where things get really sweet. So hopefully we are playing these on turn 4, and we have a few options. First, the key card in the deck, the namesake card in the deck, Goblin Dark Dwellers. So 5 mana 4/4 with Menace. When it enters the battlefield, we get to cast an instant or sorcery from our graveyard with converted mana cost 3 or less. And then if we do, we exile it. So it basically gives an instant or sorcery with converted mana cost 3 or less flashback, but we get to cast it for free. So this lines up with Stone Rain, Molten Rain, and our Beast Within. So what we want to do is play that Mana Dork, destroy a land on turn 2. On turn 3, destroy another land, hopefully, with the Acid Moss or our Avalanche Riders. On turn 4, we get 2 Dark Dwellers, which not only gives us a reasonable 4/4 Menace body, but lets us flashback a Stone Rain or a Molten Rain to kill another land. And this is where this deck is far more competitive than the Against the Odds version, because we actually get a 4/4 beater that also destroys land, and Goblin Dark Dwellers can close out the game pretty quick. So this is almost always what we want to be doing on turn 4. Acidic Slime is kind of our backup. It's only a 2/2 for 5, which isn't great. It does have Death Touch, so it can kind of trade up, sort of, at least as far as its power and toughness are concerned. And when it enters the battlefield, we can destroy an artifact, an enchantment, or a land. So it has a little bit of utility. And then 2 Thragtusk. Against like an aggro deck, Thragtusk is more important, I think, than Dark Dwellers, because like Burn can win with only a couple lands, and they're probably getting our life total pretty low. So we can use Thragtusk to stabilize. That's a card I kind of go back and forth with Thrun. I sometimes play the third Thragtusk over the single Trun. Other times I play the single Thrun over the third Thragtusk. It really depends on the format, but if you're in a counterspell metagame, then you probably want Thrun. If you're playing against a lot of aggro and burn and zoo decks, Thragtusk is clearly better than Thrun. So anyway, that's the plan so far. Oh wait, we have one more. The other most important card in the deck, Inferno Titan. So this is our payoff card, and this is what makes the deck so much less janky and so much more powerful than the Against the Odds version. So the problem with the Against the Odds version is we would destroy lands, keep our opponent low on lands, but we didn't have a good way to finish the game. We were trying to beat down with Eternal Witnesses and Fulminator Mages and stuff, or get the Dingus Egg kill. Well, in this deck, we're destroying lands, and we're making our land drops, and even ramping a little bit. And then we play an Inferno Titan, and it just closes out the game super quick. Mana base wise, this is the fatal flaw in this deck. I don't want to say fatal, but this is the biggest problem in the deck. The rest of our deck is already fairly expensive for a budget deck, so we're going pretty skimpy on the mana base. 4 Evolving Wilds, 11 Forests, and 7 Mountains. So the problem here is Arbor Elf really likes dual lands that have the forest type. So Stomping Grounds, for example, because that allows our Arbor Elf to untap a red source and gives us the double red we need for Inferno Titan and Goblin Dark Dwellers and Molten Rain on turn 2. In our deck, it's a little bit harder to make that happen, so sometimes we get some awkwardness where we need to go Forest Arbor Elf on turn 1, and then on turn 2 we play a Mountain, which is fine if we have a Stone Rain or a Beast Within, but if we have a Molten Rain, we have to wait another turn to start destroying lands, and that one turn can be the difference between winning and losing the game. Instead of keeping our opponent at 1 or 2 lands, depending on if we're on the play or the draw, we're keeping our opponent at 2 or 3 lands, and you can do a lot more with 3 mana than you can with 2 mana in Modern. So that's the biggest downside of the deck. Having the ability to fetch for Stomping Grounds would really improve the mana and our consistency, but we can get by even without it. Anyway, let's talk about the sideboard briefly. We have 2 Tormod's Crypts for graveyard decks, 3 Flame Slash to deal with opposing creatures, and then 2 Pithing Needles to lock down Planeswalkers. It can even hit a fetch land if we really need to. We have 4 Ancient Grudge. Affinity seems like a really bad matchup, so Ancient Grudge and 4 copies is designed to help there. Plus it helps against random other decks too. You can kill an Aether Vial or an Snaring Bridge or something. 2 Anger of the Gods. This one has sweet synergy with Beast Within, because we can Beast Within one of our opponent's lands and they get the 3/3 Beast, and then Anger of the Gods does 3 damage and sweeps it away. And then 2 Spike Feeders. This is our life gain card. If we weren't worried about budget, I'd probably play Obstinate Baloth or something. But Spike Feeder technically gains us 4 life for only 3 mana, and it can chump block in between, so it's not as good of an attacking threat as like an Obstinate Baloth. Doesn't have the upside of going to the battlefield if it gets discarded, but it still does the job of gaining life if we're just concerned about gaining a little bit of life against burn. So I don't know. If we had more budget, Kitchen Finks, Obstinate Baloth would be options here, but Spike Feeder is a good budget alternative to the we need to gain 4 life slot. So that's the deck. I think it's pretty sweet, and I think it's pretty competitive. The mana base is a little problematic at times, so sometimes we lose to ourselves because we stumble on mana and can't start destroying lands as quickly as we need to. But when things go smoothly, we can beat just about anyone, and it's really practical and possible that we keep our opponent at 1 or 2 lands for the entire game, while we are going up our curve and playing 4/4s with Menace and Thragtusk and then finally Inferno Titan. The other problem I've had with the deck is sometimes we just draw the wrong parts of our deck. We really need to have one of our ramp cards on turn 1, then land destruction spells on turns 2 and 3. But then we also need to have a Inferno Titan or a Dark Dwellers or a Thragtusk to close out the game. So if we have games where we draw all Mana Dorks and land destruction, but never draw a finisher, usually that doesn't end well because our opponent has a lot of time to draw out of their land problems and get back in the game. In the same way, if we are just naturally trying to play lands into Inferno Titan and Thragtusk, we're probably going to be too slow in a lot of matchups. But I think it's competitive. You can definitely play this at F&M level, and I think with mana base tuning and so forth, you might be able to even play it at a level higher than that, maybe take it to an open or a GP, and a lot of it will depend on what the format looks like moving forward. Eldrazi is no longer around, so it doesn't have that deck to feast on. Tron may be on a downswing without Eye of Ugin, so it doesn't have that deck to feast on. So we'll see. If Modern, with this new shake-up and unbannings and bannings, is a bunch of aggro decks, then this deck gets much worse. If everyone's playing Zoo and Burn and Infect, on the other hand, if people are playing control-y decks and trying to play Tezzerets with Sword of the Meek and Suspend Ancestral Visions and things like that, then this deck is still pretty good. I really like the matchup against Control, and you can even do other things, add more Thruns and so forth, to make it even better against Control. So anyway, make sure to check out the website, mtggoldfish.com. Got tons of awesome content, decks, prices, metagame strategy. That's where you'll find the article for this budget magic, so take a minute to check that out. Also, if you enjoyed the video, take a second to click the subscribe button that's about to pop up on the bottom of your screen, and if you want to click the like button, that would be awesome as well. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoy our Dark Dweller Stone Rain budget magic for Modern, and I will talk to you soon.